evening, everybody. I am so excited to talk to you about miscarriage tonight. I'm really excited also. This is National Infertility Awareness Week. I actually didn't have anything orange to wear, but I very much support this week because it's such an incredibly important conversation to have. And I have just set up a new Instagram account, which is really highlighting my research and what I'm specifically doing. And so please make sure you follow me, Miscarriage PhD, if you have not, if you're not following me, because this is such an important conversation. And when I was reviewing a lot of the posts from the miscarriage groups, from the stillborn groups, from the infertility groups, I've got to say I'm so alarmed by the fact that so many women are not using any folate. So this is an interactive session. So please make sure you pop up into the chat box. Do you take a prenatal? Yes or no? And if you take a prenatal, is it folic acid? Is it folinic? Or is it methyl? Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then I'm so glad you're here, because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So for those of you that do not know me, my name's Carolyn Ladowski, and I founded MTHFR Support Australia. And I did that 12 years ago because I stumbled, and it literally was stumbled upon the fact that half my patients had high folate levels in the blood. And I thought, well, what does that mean? Why would some people have high folate and others, their folate says it's okay? And it wasn't until many months later, after doing so much research, I can't tell you, that I realized that it wasn't a good thing at all. All the labs and everybody told me, oh, that's good. It means that these people are having a lot of leafy green vegetables. And I thought, no, I actually don't think it does mean that. So I was at a conference and someone happened to mention the fact that folate levels in the blood that were elevated were linked with the MTHFR gene. And I thought, oh my God, what is that? And I asked this woman and said, what is MTHFR? And she said, it's the gene that creates folate. Now, 12 years ago, we didn't know so much about it. But as a researcher, I am determined. My mission in life is to make sure that everybody understands the difference and why this gene is so important. Now, in my mind, we're so used to hearing take folate, take folate, take folate. But what really alarmed me on the weekend when I was looking at some of these comments in women that had had multiple miscarriage, the word still isn't out there that we should be taking folate. And you should be taking folate, not when you fall pregnant, but 3 to 4 months before, and so should your partner. And if there's nothing else that you walk away with from today, I want you to understand that you need to be taking folate. So let's talk about it. If you've had a miscarriage or someone in your family has a miscarriage, it actually gives us clues. And it tells us that there is a potential problem with this MTHFR gene that controls your folate. Now, the MTHFR gene, 65% of us have mutations, or we call them polymorphisms, in that gene. So what that means is you could well have this and not even know. Your partner could have it and not even know. You can be having miscarriages purely because you don't have enough folate. And so if your folate is low, then you do not have good DNA and your partner does not have good DNA. If your DNA isn't good quality, you are more likely to miscarry. It's as simple as that. And when it comes to MTHFR genes, the research tells us if your partner has it and his folate is low and you do not, you can still miscarry. So if you are at all having problems with fertility, the number one thing you have to do is work out if you have a problem with your folate genetically. And we're going to talk about some of the environmental influences as well. But I'm currently doing my PhD. I've just done my honors. I am endeavoring to get research so that we can send it to every doctor, to every IVF center. I don't care if I have to do a presentation every day of my life. We have got to let these practitioners know that MTHFR does matter. And they will often say it doesn't because they don't understand. And how could it possibly not matter when it's how you make biologically active folate? It's a pure biochemical pathway. So if anyone says it doesn't matter, they don't actually understand what it does, because it 100% does matter. And so what we need to do is understand folate generally, because there are 3 forms of folate, and you may not know that either. Folic acid, which I bet for those of you that are taking a prenatal, have a look at the back and see, does it say folic acid? If it does, that is a man-made folate. It doesn't exist naturally. You can't make folic acid. It is a man-made supplemental form of folate that is not natural. It doesn't exist in your body. And the only way that you can use folic acid is if your genes let you. Now, in my experience, many of you with infertility not only have a problem with the MTHFR gene, but you actually have a problem with this DHFR gene, and it stands for dihydrofolate reductase. And again, it's the gene, it's the enzyme that takes that folic acid and allows you to use it. So for many of you, folic acid is not going to be biologically used properly because you have issues with how you use it. Secondly, folinic. Now, it is an active form. It's a metabolically active form, but it is not the biologically active form that you need to methylate your DNA to have good quality DNA. Okay, so the end goal of your folate cycle is to make methylfolate. That's it. And it's methylfolate that the baby uses for the brain health, that you use for brain health, that you methylate your DNA with, not the others. So the end goal is methylfolate. It is not folinic and it is not folic. So that's really important to understand. And unfortunately, in the research world and in the doctor world, when someone says folic acid, they mean folate, right? They mean folate. So we've also got to get the terminology right within the medical fraternity that folic acid is not methylfolate and methylfolate is not folic acid. We need to understand the difference between them. Now, here's in a nutshell, this is your folate pathway. And you can see that folic acid is at the very top. It then needs to go through DHFR twice to make tetrahydrofolate. And tetrahydrofolate is one of your most important folates because it's what gets recycled every millisecond of every day. And so we've got to be able to recycle it. And what happens is we push it down this pathway, and you can see MTHFR is at the very bottom. And at the very bottom is your methylfolate. So 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate is what 5-MTHF stands for. That's what you're trying to create. So tell me, why would you take folic acid at the top if you're relying on your body creating 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate and if you have an MTHFR gene? Does it make sense that that's what you would do as a preference, given we have methylfolate available? That's the number one question that I have. I wouldn't even use Folinic because Folinic's out here. This is Folinic here. And if you are recycling your folates well, you will be making Folinic anyway. But Folinic still has to be converted to methylfolate. So when I talk folate, I don't mean folic acid. So that's a really, really important distinction. Now, this is how it works. Folic acid synthetic has to go through DHFR twice to be converted to tetrahydrofolate. The folate you eat in leafy green vegetables does not. It goes through the gut and it converts to tetrahydrofolate. So if you have a problem with DHFR, you have a problem using folic acid. The other thing about DHFR that's really important to remember is all bread flour, almost all packaged goods in the US, Canada, and Australia now are fortified with folic acid. Now, when they originally decided to fortify foods, they only put a small amount in, 100 micrograms per gram or 100 grams of flour. And it was really only bread flour that was included. But the problem is now we have so much. So if you have a standard Australian or American, Canadian diet, and this is where I think our kids get into trouble, is that, you know, they get up and they have a breakfast cereal fortified with folic acid. They then have a sandwich for lunch fortified with folic acid. They then have a snack of some sort in the afternoon fortified with folic acid. And if they're having in the US any corn products or anything like that, fortified with folic acid. So this DHFR enzyme copes with 200 to 300 micrograms a day. You know, most of you, if you eat any bread flour or any products, you're getting over 1,000. So what does that do? Now, the research isn't categorical, but what it says is unmetabolized folic acid builds up. It also says that almost every baby born to a mother in a fortified country has unmetabolized folic acid when they are born. And it's in the cord blood. It crosses the placenta. The other very disturbing thing, which is part of my research project, is the theory is if the unmetabolized folic acid gets too high, it actually shuts down your MTHF production. So your biologically active folate gets shut down if that unmetabolized folic acid gets too high. That is alarming. And unmetabolized folic acid has been linked with cancer. It's been linked with breast cancer, prostate cancer, natural killer cell activity. We do not know the full extent of it. But I can absolutely tell you from a clinical perspective, for the last 12 years, when I take my patients off folic acid and only give them methylfolate, we have over an 85% success rate in actually having live babies. And this is something that I actually want to show you because it is so important. So there's two things here is, what are your genetics doing? Number one, do you have problems in either of those genes? But two, environmentally, are you taking folic acid that's too high? And if you're in the US or Canada, in Australia, we can only put, well, the leading brand has 800 micrograms. But in the US and Canada, you get more than that in prenatal products. And that is a problem. So what we need to do, and we first of all talk about what is a polymorphism, what is a mutation. We used to call it mutation. We don't call it that anymore. We call it a polymorphism. And all it means is this. There is an expected DNA sequence for every gene in your body. There, we have a code that is we expect to see. And in the case of the MTHFR gene, we get substitutions. So we have two main genes that we check for, the C677T and the A1298C. And what it means is there's been a substitution in the code. And what does that do? Well, it downregulates the activity of that enzyme that's meant to make your biologically active folate. So you may have two copies of that gene that are polymorphic and you don't even know it. And if you do, your downregulation can be as much as 65%. Now, as I said at the very beginning, I am so alarmed that women and men do not understand that they must be taking a prenatal. Because once you're pregnant, it's too late. What lays down the foundation of your child's health for the rest of its life is the 4 months before you fall pregnant. So you have got to be taking it for 4 months before you even try. So this is my research that was done 2 years ago. And what I did is I did a case series and I looked at what practitioners who knew about MTHFR, what were they actually doing with their patients that had MTHFR that had infertility issues. And so we documented what was happening over the course of the treatment of these patients. And what we found was that we only took Australian practitioners. They could either be a naturopath, a nutritionist, a GP, it didn't matter, but they had to have had patients who had MTHFR, who had infertility. And we got them to fill out a form to say, what did you do with your patients and what was the outcome? And we included any women. We only looked at the women for this trial, 20 to 49 years of age. So you can see there's 49 years of age. And I'm more and more convinced now that age is not really a big issue if you get this folate right. And so we looked at, well, how many, all of them had MTHFR, but what was the variance of the different polymorphisms? What advice did they give them about folic acid? What supplements did they give them? What dose did they give them? And what was the pregnancy outcome? Now, these are our cases. So you can see that we had 12 women. They all had multiple miscarriage, except these bottom two. But this one, the 46-plus-year-old, had 10 failed IVF. 10. And you look at this and you go, my God, like, is there any hope at all that these people might actually fall pregnant and have bubs? And from 12 years of experience with my patients, I can tell you that I was pretty confident that we would actually see some sort of change. So all of them, as we said, had MTHFR. One was homozygous, which means she got the mutated copy from her mum and dad, so had the 65% down regulation. 5 were heterozygous, which means they only had one copy from mum or dad. We don't know because mum or dad randomly give it to you. And that's a downregulation of roughly 30 to 40%. Homozygous A1298C, we actually had none, but again, it was 2 copies, and normally that's about a 50% downregulation. 2 were heterozygous, which is probably the one I worry about the most. It's only maybe a 20% downregulation. But what really surprised me is that we had 4 that had 1 copy of each. We call that compound heterozygous, and that's roughly a 50% downregulation. So you can see there that the biggest one was the heterozygous, and this is the compound heterozygous in the yellow. We don't have the copy for that at the bottom. So what was interesting is that half of the patients were taking folate, but 2 were taking what the standard protocol of 5,000 micrograms of folic acid. So you know now that that's not necessarily a great thing with someone with infertility, because that enzyme that's going to use the folic acid gets inhibited at 20 to 30, 200 to 300 micrograms. They've been given 5,000. So is it a surprise that they were having fertility issues? Not necessarily. The folic acid was removed in the supplements by every practitioner. And in 75% of the cases, they also said, and do not eat it in your food. But methylfolate was given to every patient. And this is, so you can see that we've put the polymorphisms that they have, the folate that they were taking, and what they were then told to avoid or not avoid. And it's interesting because, and I'll go through that in more detail in a sec, all of them were taking methylfolate. But guess what the dose of was of an average? 2,325 micrograms of methylfolate. That's way above what I would suggest any of you are currently taking. Hardly any of you would be taking that much unless you are savvy in this particular topic. Folinic, some of them were on combinations of both, and the average was about 670. And the 2 women that had been taking the high dose folic acid were taken off it, given methylfolate, and both of them successfully fell pregnant with IVF. So whether you're considering IVF or not, it doesn't matter. You still need to prep. You still need to take your 4 months prep to get your DNA right, because it will not help you if your folate's low. Once they do that implantation, it's not going to help you. You will still miscarry unless you've got your folate right, unless the sperm has the right amount of folate. And this is the most important thing to remember. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the dose. So homozygous 677T, 3,500 micrograms. Heterozygous, 3,500. Compound heterozygous, 3,800. 3,800. So you can see we had an average of 2,325 micrograms, but some of them were taking a lot more than that. And if you're homozygous, I think you probably need to take a little bit more than 2,300 micrograms. You might be wanting to push towards the 3. And so here's the outcome. All of them were diagnosed with infertility. All had either multiple miscarriage or failed IVF. Now, we had 11 pregnancies and 10 live births. That's a pretty good percentage rate. And here's what we did. So you can see this woman had 5 miscarriages, but she fell pregnant. 1 miscarriage, 3 IVF, failed, fell pregnant. 2 miscarriages, 3 failed IUI, fell pregnant. All of these had babies. The only two that didn't were these two. Now, as you can see, this lady was on the lowest amount of folate. If you look at the C677T, you can see that they were all taking way, way, way higher dose than she was. She actually fell pregnant twice within the study period, but she miscarried twice. Now, we don't know categorically, but looking at these statistics, we might suppose that she just wasn't taking enough folate. Now, this lady, we don't know. Part of the reason is we just didn't have the resources nor the time to look at the men in this study. But when I see something like that, where she's taking, at least a decent amount, I probably would have liked to have pushed her higher, but we don't know what was going on with her partner. And if her partner was low in folate, then she will still miscarry, as I said before. So these were really, really good results. And it is actually the springboard for my PhD. So my PhD is now going to take women with recurrent pregnancy loss. We're going to do a randomized controlled trial, and we're going to put half of them on folic acid and we're going to put half of them on methylfolate. We're not going to know who gets what. It's randomized. So randomly, they'll be assigned one of two groups. And it is by doing research like this that I hope we get enough information that fertility patients and our GPs say, okay, I've heard about MTHFR. Even if you don't have MTHFR, I still think that taking methylfolate is a preference, personally. And you can see we had a 91.7% success rate. 91.7. That's a really good outcome that should warrant further research, and hence the reason why I'm doing it. And this is a summary of the ladies that we had in this study. So it's a pretty amazing outcome. What we just need to do is now build on it. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but case studies are considered to be the lowest form of evidence. Even though they give us a really good indication of what might be happening clinically, we now have to build on it so people will stand up and listen, and hence the reason. So the biggest question is, how many months before? And I've already told you the answer to that. It has to be 4 months. So if you are starting today and you are saying to me, I am going to start taking methylfolate, when can I fall pregnant? My answer is always going to be 4 months. And I know that some of you might be older. I know that some of you might have had multiple miscarriages already. I know that some of you are really desperate. But I could honestly and with all my heart and soul say to you, you cannot compromise. You and your partner cannot compromise on that 4 months, because it is going to affect the quality of your child's life for life. And they actually believe it could be a 3-generational thing, that what your mother took and what her mother took actually affected you. And we didn't have the issues of folic acid fortification back then. We didn't eat packaged foods. We ate from the earth to the plate, pretty much. Well, we've stopped all that. And I think there's many things affecting fertility. Don't get me wrong, this is not the one thing, but it is part of the thing. And it's a big part of the thing. And when you fall pregnant, you've got to take your folate all the way through. And when you're breastfeeding, you've got to take your folate all the way through. You do not stop until you stop breastfeeding. And that's another really important thing. And so if we look at what the research says, some studies say you need it for 12 weeks to prevent neural tube defects. Alarmingly, again, only 24% of women took folate. Why? We've been saying take folate for, at least 10 years. Why is only 24.7% of women taking it? And why are little to no men taking it? I mean, this is the biggest issue, that we have to spread this word. And if I just want you to help share this, that you have to be taking it. 3/4 of the women in this study were at risk of having red cell folate levels so low, they were at risk of having a baby with neural tube defects. And only 27 to 44% of women took folate before they fell pregnant. It's too late when you fall pregnant. The neural tube closes 21 days after you fall pregnant. Most of you don't even know you're pregnant 21 days after your last period. So we need 4 months. It's absolutely important. And this particular study said that, this is an Australian study, that less than 1/3 of women took folate before pregnancy. It's likely that for many women, their average intake of folate is not adequate to reach requirements in pregnancy. For most of these women who took folate, they took it too late. They took it once they were pregnant. And a survey in the US, and I find this statistic unbearable to even think about, that only 7% of women knew they had to take folate before pregnancy. Why? And I think when we've got this whole issue with folic acid and fortified foods, it's even more important. It is actually more important than it has ever been. And I wonder if this is one of the reasons why infertility is on the rise. And this says that body composition at age 9 is influenced by the folate that the mother took before pregnancy. And it said that they really need to take it right through pregnancy. So it's a really important thing. And this is a patient of mine that I've changed her name, but I saw her many, many years, and she'd come to see me. And by all intents and purposes, you would think, if you looked at everything that she was doing, you would say 100% she was doing the right thing. She was seeing naturopaths, she was seeing herbalists, she was eating really well, she was actually doing IVF, she did everything. But she had fallen pregnant multiple times, and she always miscarried before 12 weeks. And she was on so many formulas. I honestly think that she rattled. She was on so much. And so when I first saw her, I just got all the supplements and I shifted them all to the side. And I said, you have MTHFR. I want you to just take this, this, and this. And I put her on 10 times the amount of folate she was on. She went into IVF. And this is another really important point, please. If you discover that you feel better on methylfolate, you get folic acid out of your diet, and you go into IVF, please collect new eggs. Don't use old eggs. And I call them old because they haven't got the benefit of the folate. I'm all for IVF if you need it. Many women that change to the methylfolate, get rid of the folic acid, they don't need IVF anymore. They fall pregnant naturally. But if you are going to IVF, please make sure that you, again, do the 4 months preconception before you collect new eggs, and don't use old eggs. So she did. She used old eggs. We'd done the 4 months. She said, I just have to use these old eggs. I said, all right, it's not my preference, but okay, fine. And she miscarried. And I can't say that I was displeased, because I don't want anyone using old eggs. I want new eggs. I want folate-rich eggs. I want DNA perfect eggs. So we started again, no old eggs, advised her to do collection again, and she had it booked in for 4 months. And I said, under no circumstances are you to stop your autoimmune formula. She fell pregnant again. And guess what? No IVF. So this is little Jack. She went on to have a little daughter second, and she's just now had number 3. No IVF clinic, no hormones, no stimming, no nothing, just her methylfolate and the supplements we had given her. And she said, which was really great, she said, thank you for all your guidance and support. Beyond that, you have helped us every day through improved well-being, and I had a dream pregnancy. We call the methylfolate our happy tablets. And the reason she called them her happy tablets is because she never, ever, ever felt better. And it was almost like she had a complete and utter personality change. She was confident. She was, get up and go. Her mood was great. She really felt good. And so it can be life-changing if you are low in folate to actually get it up. And when we know that low folate is linked to all these things, and even ADD, ADHD, allergies, and etc., why wouldn't we do our 4 months when we know that that's what we've got to do? And whenever you've got rapid growth, there's a huge demand for folate and a huge demand for healthy DNA. And this is the reason I think many of you have multiple miscarriages, is because you just don't have the right form and you don't have enough folate. And so let's just quickly recap. MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase, is what it stands for. And essentially, it is the enzyme that takes the food you eat, the folate you eat, and converts it to the biologically active form, and we call that methylfolate. That's all you really need to know. And that supports healthy DNA. And so what we're talking about is just making sure that you've got enough folate and enough B12 to then use it. So there are nutrients that work with it, like B12 and phosphatidylcholine and all these other lovely things to help and support you. But essentially, the end goal is you've got to have enough methylfolate. If you don't, you will continue to miscarry. And this methylfolate makes this little methyl group that you can see there on the right. And essentially, it's just a carbon surrounded by 3 hydrogens. But what's really important is that little exposed arm, which grabs onto your proteins and your amino acids and your DNA in every cell, and it locks in and it allows it to do what it needs to do. And most of the time, it's switching off harmful things like anxiety. It's switching off cancer promoting cells. It's actually really beneficial to your overall biochemistry. It's helping with detoxification. It's helping with creatine synthesis. It's helping get rid of toxic estrogens. It's a really important little tiny group in your body that you need. And there are a lot of different scenarios and health conditions that are associated with this lack of methyls from methylfolate. So we've got to be having it. We've got to make it, and we've got to take enough. And we've got to understand our genetics and our environment to say, okay, I know how much to take and I know when I need to take it. And you've got to take it for 4 months. So this is essentially what I was talking about. Let's say that this is your partner and this is you, and you both have 1 copy of MTHFR. The chance of your child being homozygous, or 2 copies, is 25%. Now, it's usually the homozygous babies that miscarried because either you or your partner didn't have enough folate, or both. And if you, let's say we leave you as 1 copy, but your partner has 2 copies, then that's a potential 1 in 2 chance that your baby is homozygous or 2 copies. So if your partner isn't taking folate, could that baby miscarry? Yep, there's a 50% chance that it will miscarry if he doesn't have enough folate. So if he's not taking a prenatal with methylfolate, you're not doing the right thing for your DNA. You're not doing the right thing to ensure you're not miscarrying. And that's what's so important. And I think it's neglected by so many people. Another patient of mine in the US, she and her husband came to see me. They had a stillbirth at 36 weeks. I was looking at a lot of the hashtags around infertility, stillbirth, etc. over the weekend. And I'm so alarmed at the amount of people that have stillbirths. And she found out after she lost the baby that she and her husband both had MTHFR. And she joined us through the course. So she was looking for, why do I miscarry? She was looking for stillbirth. She came across our site, joined the course, and then she started to see me for the whole time of her pregnancy. And, she did fall pregnant. She did successfully have a little bub, and that's her beautiful baby, Leyland. And she didn't know. So what I think is very sad is that if she had been told to try again, chances are she probably would have had a miscarriage, given that both of them didn't even know they had a problem with their folate. And so once we changed everything, she fell pregnant straight away. She did her 4 months. They both did their 4 months. And straight away, she fell pregnant. And she actually had a dream pregnancy. She had no issues at all. Obviously, there was a lot of emotional support, because you don't go through something like that without having huge anxiety the second time. And this is what is really important, that you become part of a group that is going to support you no matter where you are in your infertility journey. And you just need to know that there are really good outcomes. And so the one thing I want you to know is, just don't keep getting told, or don't believe anyone that says to you, it's a numbers game, just keep trying. It's actually not the answer. You can keep trying till you're blue in the face, but your chances of having a successful live birth will be compromised again and again and again if you don't change what you're doing from a folate perspective. And I have 12 years experience with patients every single day, and I can tell you it 100% makes a difference. And so in trying to think how we can help, now obviously we do have fertility practitioners, but I like to think that we create a supportive environment, and we want to be able to give you the support and guidance that you need to go through your pregnancies. And so the things that you really need to do is check for you and your partner that you don't have MTHFR. Even if you do and you're taking folic acid, I would really recommend you take a non-folic acid based prenatal. Get to know what form and dose is right for you. So this is something that we teach people within our community of, okay, well, you have this particular gene combination, you and your partner, this is how much you need to take, this is how much they need to take. And looking at the other nutrients that are really important for your uptake of that folate are also we need to consider. And so B12 is one of them. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, please reconsider, or make sure you're taking B12 injections throughout your fertility journey, because without B12, you're not going to use the folate you just so desperately need. And we need a really good folate-rich diet. And there's some of the nutrients. Phosphatidylcholine is so super important. Vitamin D is really important. And they're really good, important vitamins and minerals that need to be supported along the way. So the things that you need to be able to walk away with is, do I have MTHFR? What bloods do I need to understand? And part of this whole process is, I want you to be empowered, because the feeling that I got from, again, looking at all those Facebook groups and pages, and I spent many hours over the weekend because I knew I was talking to you all tonight, is this loss of empowerment. They're frightened, they're scared, they're lonely, they're isolated. And I really get that. And I think the one thing that we get the overriding comment about from the people within our community is they actually feel empowered to know what they need to do to turn their fertility around. And I think that's exciting. So being able to understand what supplements you can take, because then if you do go into IVF, you're in a stronger position. But I like to think if you do what we tell you to do, you probably don't need the IVF, unless, of course, you've got major structural issues that would preclude you from falling pregnant naturally. But as you can see, 91.7% of the women in our first research, they didn't need IVF. One woman had had 10 failed IVF and she fell pregnant naturally. I've had patients who have been told you've got a 2 to 3% chance of falling pregnant with IVF, and yet they fell pregnant naturally. And yet they're falling pregnant at 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, even 50 years of age. So to be told that you're too old at 32 is not correct. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and there are a lot of things out in the marketplace which make you scared, make you isolated, make you frightened, and you've got to turn that around. You've got to actually take the power back and go, you know what? Stuff you, I know what to do. And, you know, what diet? How do you prepare your home? There are some women that are miscarrying because they've got power boards against their bedroom windows. So environmental issues, how do you actually control those endocrine disrupting hormones that we're exposed to every day of our lives? What exercise can you do? What if you've got fertility issues like PCOS or, you know, estrogen dominance or endometriosis? What do? How do you get support for that? How do you know what to do other than to go to an IVF or fertility center? And so I think there's so many questions, and I like to think that we can provide you with the answers that you actually need. So we have an online portal where you can get all of this information, but it's not an isolated thing. So if you say, yep, I want to do it, then you can actually jump on tonight and you can start. Our fertility specialist, Jess, has a Facebook group. She has welcome sessions where you can just jump in and you can join the group, you can ask questions, you can get help, you can get support. And at any point along the way, you say, look, I need an appointment, you can have an appointment. But at least this gives you where to start, how to test, how to do all this stuff, because I want you to know what you need to do. I don't want you to necessarily be told this is what you've got to do. I want you to know, so that when you hear something that doesn't fit right with you, you know, you can say, no, I actually don't need that. So we look at how to treat your fertility issues. If you've got PCOS or endometriosis or thyroid issues, how do you deal with that? What do you need to do? And we've got our support team all along the way to help you. We've also got a guide to the testing. So we actually give you sheets where you can get your bloods done, and you can write where you're high, where you're low, and what supplements you need to take, if you need to take any. And we go through your diet. So what's the best diet? What do you need to do? What don't you need to do? How do you prepare your home? What are the things that you need to be concerned about? What sort of products should you be avoiding? If you do have a power box, what do you do? Exercise, and then next steps. And so we've got worksheets, we've got videos, we've got emails, we've got monthly sessions, we've got welcome sessions, we've got everything that you need to support this journey, we've got in this one program. And some of you are going to be detail freaks and you're going to go, I just want it all. And others of you go, nah, just give me the top line stuff. And that's fine. You can do it any way you like. It's just that you need this info. And we've got leaders in the field that have contributed to this, that have done podcasts, that are talking to you about all the things that you need to know along the way. And you also get your pack, which is your prenatal, your B12 and your folate, because you're going to need to take more than 500 micrograms of methylfolate, which is all we can put in Australia. And in the US, you can also, we can send that to you from here as well. You get a recipe book. So we've got fertility boosting recipes. It's over $8,000. And after the weekend, I thought, Jess has put so many bonuses in here, it's ridiculous. But after the weekend, I wanted to give you, you also get a 1 hour introductory group call with our head fertility specialist, Jess. And that will be probably on Friday. I just need to check with her. If it's not this Friday, it's next Friday. I just can't remember the date. Now, it's $997. And so it's normally $1,997. But for this next 48 hours, I decided, because of National Infertility Awareness Week, I wanted to give it to you at $497. So it's $500 off. Now, if you consider one IVF session is going to cost you $10,000, and I believe that pretty well 90% of women, given that they don't have structural issues affecting their biology in falling pregnant, I think 90% of you, if you change and do what we ask you to do, our success rate is definitely over 85%. And in that research trial you saw it was 91.7%. So it is a really great offer, and you will get, Neve will put into the chat box the link. You've got 48 hours to use it. And the course really, I think the number one thing that people always say is the empowerment, the ability to join people who are exactly the same as you are and having trouble, and that supportive environment is really beautiful. And we promise that we are here to support you. I am so determined in my single-minded approach. We just have to get the word out. And by you supporting us with this course, it means that we are able to do more and more of this to spread the word. And I would really ask you to share, the not only the course, but just share this webinar, and being able to get people to get this information is really important. So I'm going to go to some questions. And if you, I think Neve's got we'll put the bit.ly link up for you. So if you want it there, she's put it. So Martin, hello, Martin. Do you have data on the DHFR polymorphisms of your 12 cases? No, we didn't actually collect the DHFR. We only collected MTHFR. However, there is a fair bit of research on DHFR polymorphisms. And what's really exciting now is that there's combinations of genes being looked at. So DHFR, SHMT, which is really important with your recycling, methionine synthase. And DHFR is not only instrumental in using the folic acid, but it's really important for your neurotransmitter synthesis as well. So it has a dual purpose, because, and if it's inhibited by folic acid, which it does over a certain amount, you can understand how it might be affecting anxiety and mood as well. So I think they're really important things to remember. Thank you, Martin. Now, does anyone else have a question on that? You can either put it in the chat box or put it in the QA. Okay. Okay, so this is from Neve. I was diagnosed with pyroluria and undermethylation back in 2015. which was life-changing. I treat my pyrrole disorder daily with specialized supplementation, but I stopped treating the methylation because I react to the supplementation, specifically the methylfolate. It dries my hands out to the point where my skin cracks between my fingers. We have been trying to get pregnant for years now, on and off, and all tests indicate everything is well. I did your quiz and it says the missing key is probably methylfolate. I tried taking it again, but the same reaction. I suspect if I still have a methylation problem, I am actually an over-methylator. No, I do not believe that. When I was first diagnosed, that's what the doctor told me. And then on the next visit, when I brought it up, he said, no, you're an under-methylation. Of course, I was confused, but went on with that and took the appropriate treatment. I've started to question it again as I resonate more with the under-methylation symptoms. Okay, so Jen, here's the thing. If you are on a pyrrole formula, I would say what you have done is bottomed out your homocysteine. And if your homocysteine is too low, because remember B6 pushes homocysteine out of the body. So if your homocysteine is too low, you're not going to have enough to pick up that folate and utilize it. I don't like the terminology over-methylator and under-methylator. I think all over-methylation means is you're not using your folate. And under-methylate is it just means you're not making enough. So if you've been on a pyrrole pack for a long period of time, I'd say the problem is, Jen, that you've bottomed out your homocysteine and you're not taking enough. So I would like to see what your homocysteine level is. And if it's lower than 7, you've got to work really hard to get it back up. And you may actually find that you need to work hard to do that. Because I would bet your pyrrole disorder supplement has really high doses of B6. Am I right? And look, I that's the FIFA protocol, and many doctors follow this FIFA protocol, but it's never sat really well with me because I don't believe anyone's an over-methylator. I think they've got a block in their ability to use folate. And as practitioners, our job is to find out why they can't use it. Is their B12 too low? Is their glutathione too low? Do they have heavy metals? Do they have, mold exposure? Do they have candida? Do they have methionine synthase issues? There's many reasons why you don't use methyls. Homocysteine too low. These are all things that you need to consider when you're looking at, and that's why I think what's really great about the course is you get the info, but then you've got the hands-on people along the way to actually support you in how to do it. And so I think also, can I just ask a question for everybody that's on? Can you tell me how many of you are actually taking a methylfolate-based prenatal? Is everybody taking a prenatal? Just pop it into the chat box, yes or no, if you're taking it. Yes, so Marcella is, yes. So, and it's a methyl-based prenatal, Marcella, because I'd like to just make sure. And, that's the thing. If you know that you've also got MTHFR, then you need to go higher than you probably would normally. So these are really important considerations. And I just hope that the message tonight, that you're really getting that, you're understanding. All right, so you're taking in natal, but I think that's a very low dose. And doesn't it have a combination of folinic as well? So again, I want you to look at your prenatal. So Alison is taking a prenatal with methylfolate and also additional quatrefolate liquid supplement. Okay, so Alison, just one thing on the quatrefolate versus the metafolin. Quatrefolate, research tells us that it has a 50% odd, I can't remember the exact percentage, but Martin might actually remember, a 56 or 57% absorption rate if you take 1 milligram, right? So let's say you take 1 milligram, you're getting 670 micrograms, for example. Metafolin, you're getting 90 something percent. So I think you really need to be, I prefer metafolin for its absorption, and clinically, my patients prefer it in terms of they know the difference when they take methylfolate in metafolin versus methylfolate quadrifolic. Neurologically, mentally, energy-wise, they feel a difference. Magnafolate, yes, so magnafolate is also really good. It is a good form. And Lila, just make sure that you know what your MTHFR polymorphism and what you should be taking then afterwards. Marianne is taking the Thorn Basic prenatal, but then the naturopath put you on to the pure natal. Okay, so I think again, just check from a retail perspective in Australia, our prenatal is the only one in a pharmacy or in a health food shop that does not have folic acid. The only retail brand in Australia that does not have folic acid. And it was originally a practitioner-only product, but I was so alarmed by the fact that not just anyone couldn't go and buy a non-folic acid prenatal that I think. So Martin has said that the potency of quadrifolic is 55 to 59%. So if you're taking quadrifolic and not metafolin, then you are getting a significantly lower level of potency, just so you know that. Susie, yes, I'm doing the course and working with Jess. Oh, I love it and would recommend it to others on here. Thank you, Susie. I'm so pleased to hear you say that. All right, awesome, fantastic session. Thank you so much. Reach out if you have any questions at all and you want to talk to us, admin@mthfrsupport.com.au, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have in regards to the course. If you have any questions about it, you've got 48 hours, so make sure that you take advantage of that if that's what you want to do. Otherwise, reach out to us. Thank you so much. Really lovely to see you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.